brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. Hope you learned something. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the daily All Hat No Cattle News Rodeo. I'm your host, Hat. Hello, Trovo, YouTube, and D-Live, not necessarily in that order. Of course, a big hello to my Rumble followers. I'm so glad you guys are always there for the channel. Glad that you pick it up each day. I apologize, no show on Rumble yesterday. There was some kind of a mix-up between the title I thought I had chosen and the title that was saved, if you will, when I uploaded the video. Rumble has one bad habit. If you use a title more than once, it doesn't tell you at that time. It only notifies you in a very obscure way after the video is finished uploading. And I didn't look until I was ready for bed, which was way too late to start to upload it again. And it gave me what they call error 12. And you have to research that, and you find out that error 12 means that it has the same title as a previous video. Why they can't build that in the front end, I don't know. Obviously my mistake, I guess, but that's why there was no show yesterday. My sincerest apologies. Let's get on with it, shall we? Weird stuff today. Liz Cheney looks like she's on her way out as the chair of the Republican committee in the House. We'll talk about that. Also, Asa Hutchinson in Arkansas does the right thing in the wrong way. We'll talk about that a little bit. Of course, a lot of other news regarding things in Washington. I have a big story at the end of the beginning here for the YouTube crowd about the Archbishop of San Francisco, Nancy Pelosi's Catholic boss, if you will, who has put out I can't remember what you call it when an archbishop puts something out. It's not an encyclical. It's something else. Forgive me for not remembering my catechism. But he put out basically a notice. And it says, in part, that if you profess to be a Catholic and you're pro-abortion, you should stop taking communion. And seeing how communion is one of the big sacraments in the Catholic religion, and the Catholic faith is built around performing the different sacraments, that is our duty as Catholics, then that would put them in a world of hurt. It's basically one step away from excommunication. We'll talk about that, and I'll put the link to it up in the chat. I put the link up previously on DLive and Trovo, and I'll put it up again when we get to that. And then in the after show, I've got massive Law and Order block set up for the after show. It's going to be big. I got a couple border stories, as I always do, but the first part is just absolutely loaded with Law and Order stuff, including the Iowa trooper who has been taken off duty without pay for his completely viral and absolutely hilarious video on how you need to interact with knife fights by asking LeBron James what to do. After all, WWLBD, right? I'm sorry, WWLJ. I can never do that. WWLJD, what would LeBron James do? That's what we need to know. He has been suspended without pay, but there is a silver lining, as there often is in these cases. But most of all, for the after show, I have a showcase piece. It's about a 2.5-minute video from Steven Crowder, from his Louder with Crowder daily show, Monday through Thursdays, 10 a.m. Eastern. Part of it's on YouTube, and then there's a second part on Blaze, where he is a host because he does stuff that you can't get away with on YouTube. You remember, they completely demonetized him yet again, so he has taken to putting stuff behind the paywall in order to tell YouTube where to go. But he's basically using YouTube as a loss leader now, like I am. I got the idea of doing that from him. But he put out a video that was on today's show that, as I interpret it, basically showed what a post-police force America would look like. And it's got some scenes in there from stuff that's already happened that we can expect much, much more of as these big police departments are getting defunded, as the police are getting less and less backing from their superiors and from the political higher-ups. This is what's happening now, and it can only increase. It is very sobering. It has a funny theme behind it. You're going to hear the Ghostbusters theme melody, but they'll have their own lyrics over it. I won't give away what that is, but it's very, very powerful. I don't think I've ever played a Crowder video before, but this one you need to see, and I wanted to give him full credit right up front. And I'll try to do so again when we start the after show. All right, enough babbling. Let's get into it. First off, our first Babylon Bee bookend. This is the one on the left, their U.S. section. Nations Baptists begin exodus to promised land of D.C., where dancing is now banned. And here we have a happy family loading up the van. I don't know why the little girl is standing in the way of the box being pushed into the van, but sometimes you got to let the kids help. Too many leaves on the roof for my feeling. But there in the insert is the land of milk and honey, Washington, D.C. Dateline, Washington, D.C. Baptists from around the country have left their hometowns to raise their families in Washington, D.C., where Mayor Bowser has made dancing illegal. Parenthetically, I always thought Mayor Bowser was a joke. I thought the name was a joke. I thought they were making it up to make fun of her. I had no idea until later that was her actual name. How unfortunate. Continuing with the Babylon Bee, quote, "We are so grateful to finally live in an area that supports our beliefs," said Baptist Deacon Dale Giesler. "We always thought D.C. was a swamp of evil and corruption, but it appears there has been a glorious spiritual revival with this new ban on dancing." Close quote. D.C. was on edge this week as thousands of 15-passenger vans filled with homeschoolers rolled through the district. Quote, "We don't want their kind here," said one politician anonymously. "They'll bring their casseroles and their jean skirts and totally ruin the vibe around here." Close quote. Mayor Bowser was later forced to clarify that the dancing ban was a temporary measure to prevent COVID, as well as fun, human connection, and joy. But it was too late, as over 20,000 Baptist families had already taken up residence in neighborhoods and tent cities throughout the area. Baptists have expressed their plans to make D.C.'s ban on fun and dancing permanent. D.C. authorities are considering plans to relocate all the Baptist families before they start having tent meetings and baptizing everyone. The Babylon Bee, everyone, our first of two today. All right, moving right along to my personal conceit, the market. The Dow has barely eked out a win today, closing at 0.06% over today's opening. Not even a 20 point rise in share price. It closed barely over 34,000. The S&P 500 lost over 0.6%. The Nasdaq was the big loser, almost losing a full 2%, down well below the magic 14,000 mark, now at 13,633 and change. Gold also slid as it was approaching the $1,800 mark per ounce for quite some time. Bitcoin also took it in the teeth, dropping below 55,000. But of course, the big winner today was crude oil, went up almost a full 2% at present, currently at $65.74 per barrel of West Texas Intermediate sweet crude. If you would like to look at the breakdown of that, let's get the chart up here. And as you can see, let's look at the 6-month chart for oil. And as you can see, it has been a near continuous rise, especially accelerating after November, when it was obvious to some who was going to be president, honk honk. And it has, aside from a couple dips, shown a steady increase, although it is not quite at where it was on the 5th of March, when it was at just over $66 per barrel. But it is fast approaching. It's only a few pennies below that right now. So keep your eyes on your wallets, folks. Speaking of keeping your eyes on your wallets, what drum have I been beating over and over again since January 20th? And I have not let up. And neither have a lot of other commentators. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm the first on the boat and the last to leave. I've joined a group of other people taking this voyage, if I may extend the nautical metaphor a bit further. But interest rates, runaway inflation, all of this money that's been pumped into the economy, quote unquote, since last year. Remember, we had a almost $2 trillion aid package put out at the beginning of the lockdowns last year, and there was another close to $1 billion allocated in December. And then we had the almost $2 trillion CARES Act passed by a pure Democrat vote, not one Republican voting for it in either house, back in April. I'm sorry, actually, was it February or April? I'd forgotten now, but a few weeks ago at least. And now they're proposing another $10 trillion in spending, including a $4 trillion federal budget. And people have been saying you can't print that much money without an economy behind it and expect inflation to stay flat. It's impossible. It is mathematically impossible. That's why some people have begun buying gold, although to their chagrin, it's not doing so well at the moment. Other people are buying Bitcoin. That's been up and down lately, but then again, Bitcoin always is. But these are finite resources. There's pretty much not a lot more gold being made every day. Some, but not a lot. And Bitcoin is fixed. There are only so many Bitcoins, a couple billion, I believe, somewhere around there, and they're not going to make any more. So supply and demand. But with the U.S. dollar, they have printing presses, they have paper, they have ink. Well, actually, it's more of a cloth than paper. The dollar is more of a cloth. It's heavy rag content and part paper. But that's a little bit of treasury trivia for you. But we've been saying you can't print so many dollars and expect the economy to accept them without prices going up. And we're already seeing that now before the new budget has been put through. And remember, the Democrats have at least 2 more bites at the apple on the reconciliation process before they have to go back to getting Republican votes. The infrastructure package may have to be broken up, but a large portion of it can be forced through without any Republican votes. And the same goes for the budget. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Once again, Georgia's fault. If Georgia could have elected one Republican senator, we wouldn't be in this problem right now. But Governor Kemp and Secretary of State Raffensperger screwed the pooch. No other way to look at it. And Janet Yellen, former Fed chair, now Treasury Secretary, came out today and said that higher interest rates might be coming. In fact, we might need them to keep the economy from, quote, overheating, which means as you put more money into the economy, but there still aren't as many goods to meet that demand, prices are going to go up. And the only way to put a rein on rapid price raises is to raise the interest rates. One way of looking at it, at least. And Yellen came right out today and said, yeah, there could be a temporary bit of inflation, but we'll sit on it. Well, here's the thing. It's the Fed's responsibility, and you can take the Fed or leave it. That's up to you. I need to research it more before I come down on one side or the other. But right now I'm leaning towards get rid of the Fed, just so you know. But it's the Fed that sets interest rates, not Treasury. And some people have come out and slapped Janet Yellen around for making these comments today, seemingly overstepping her bounds as Treasury Secretary and putting her thumb on the scales when it comes to what the Fed is supposed to do. Of course, the White House and Treasury are saying, no, she wouldn't do that. She used to be Fed chairman. She knows better than to think she's going to influence them. Yeah, right. The Fed is technically independent, but they are also political animals, just like anyone else in Washington. But the one thing about this article I think that is more important than what I've just talked about. Let me see if I can find it here. I didn't mark it properly. I can't find it, but the bond prices. Oh, I saw that in a different article. The bond prices have slipped significantly. You might remember that not very long ago, the U.S. 10-year Treasury bond was selling for around 2 and a little bit over base percentage points. It's slipped now to below 1.6 because people are worried about rising inflation. If the dollar becomes worth less, then those Treasury bonds aren't going to be worth as much as they accrue, and so people are less interested in buying them. And if you can't sell Treasury bonds, you can't service the debt. Period. And the concern is that sooner or later, we are going to print so much money and get so far over our skis that the rest of the world is finally going to say, you guys are never going to pay us back. All you've been paying is interest, and we're done. We want our money. We're cashing out. And if there is a run on the bond, this country fiscally is over. There will be no more United States government because they won't be able to pay for anything. It'll all be up to states and their revenue. There will be no more federal dollars coming in. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that is a foreseeable future. So it's not just interest rates that we have to worry about right now. I believe at present we've printed 70% of our total number of dollars ever printed within the last year. 70%. That's how incredibly logarithmically our spending has increased. This cannot be sustained. Just saying. Now some very sad news. It's the fat lady hasn't sung just yet, but it's not looking good for BaseCamp. Now I had never heard of this company before last week. Turns out it's basically a web development, code developing company based out of Chicago. I'm not in that industry, so I didn't know anything about it. But it seems that BaseCamp had become woke camp. There were all these working committees on different types of social justice and anti-racism and yada, yada, yada. And they were taking up a lot of employee time. And another thing was their internal communication system. It was a complete flame war with people attacking each other for not being woke enough. And finally, the head of BaseCamp had had enough. And he posted a public post, I believe about a little over a week ago, that in essence said, stop it, enough's enough. No more woke, no more anti-racism. You guys are here to work. That's your job from now on. No more committees. No more wokeness on our internal communications. It's all over with. Get back to work. And I applauded. I literally applauded when I read that. I said, finally, someone is standing up for reason and workplace efficiency and responsibility. Well, it looks like I need to take those applause back because, as it turns out, first thing that happened was a third of BaseCamp's employee base either resigned or took buyouts almost immediately. But I thought, that's cool. There are a ton of talented people out there who will be more than happy to work for a decent wage and not have to put up with this kind of PC crap. So go for it, folks. Go for it. Looks like BaseCamp may have buckled. It's not completely over yet, but they have blinked. And we all know that when you blink, the woke crowd smells blood in the water, and they do not let up until you are nothing but bones and a few pieces of skin. So here's what's happened. I described the work up to this. Well, Friday, there was a conference call. And as is often the case with these events, you had these millennials, again the word, literally crying and shaking on camera as they called into this conference. And they were screaming. And there, about 90 minutes went by, and Ryan Singer, a Jew who lost family in the Holocaust, he's their chief strategist. And Singer spoke up and said, and I quote, "I strongly disagree we live in a white supremacist culture. If you express a dissenting view, you get called a Nazi. I have not felt this is open territory for discussion. If we were trying to get into it as a group discussion, it would be very painful and divisive." And then he was attacked. He was viciously attacked. And now Singer is on leave. The company is reviewing his position, whether or not he'll stay. And the CEO is not taking any calls. So things are on a razor's edge right now at BaseCamp. I'll follow the story as best I can. I'll let you know if there are any updates. But as I said, there's blood in the water. Their BaseCamp management is chumming the water, and the sharks are moving in. I only hope one of them swallows an air tank and has it shot with a rifle by Roy Scheider. And we saw what happened at the end of Jaws when that happened. I don't know. That may be the only thing that saves them is it's an air tank and a rifle. Probably get yanked off of YouTube for saying that. I've covered a lot of bad reporting. I usually do it pretty early in the opening segment. And I have called out the left continuously. Now, the other day I mentioned that, I believe it was yesterday, that the New York Post looks like they were caught in a lie. Last week, the New York Post published a story that all of the UACs at one of the San Diego UAC centers were being given welcoming kits, including a copy of Harris's book. I think it's There Are Heroes Everywhere, or We're All Heroes, something like that. I've never read it. I don't know anything about it. I don't have kids. I would never buy it. So you may know it, you may like it, you may not like it, whatever. But that was the story, that they were all being handed this book. And where was the money coming from, and where was the money going? Well, we have since found out that that story's blown up in the New York Post face. The picture that they used for the story turned out it was only one kid with one book. There was no widespread dissemination of Harris's children's book at all. The reporter who filed the story for the New York Post quit, and she accused the Post of making her write a story they knew was false. The Post has since retracted the story, but I have yet to see a formal statement from them. And you know what? Why should they? No one else ever does. And I'm tired of holding the right to a higher standard than I am the left. If the left can smear people for years at a time and then just ghost edit the stories without ever mentioning that they've changed the narrative, post facto, then why should the New York Post have to? But this is a really good article that reminds us that the New York Post is a complete and utter aberration from the norm on the right, or the center for that matter. Let's not paint things with too broad a brush. Ash Show wrote this piece for the Daily Wire, and it is basically a list of the false stories that CNN has put out, a partial list. Just a partial list. So let's go over this. Donald Trump Jr.'s alleged early access to WikiLeaks documents. You remember, we were told that Jr. got a sneak preview of the WikiLeaks release, and they showed an email proving that he had been given the link days before it came out. And then someone actually looked at the email that was referenced in the article, and it showed that the email was sent days after the WikiLeaks dump of the DNC and the John Podesta emails. So that story blew up. And YouTube has said it never happened, and it's asked YouTube to remove the videos of their news hosts discussing it. So they're trying to put it down the memory hole. Okay, then there was Anthony Scaramucci's alleged involvement with a Russian hedge fund. CNN was compelled to retract the story and force out the 3 reporters who published it. CNN retracted the story because it faced a $100 million libel suit. Michael Cohen was going to testify against Trump. That was the big news in the fall of 2018, that Cohen was going to spill the beans. He was going to tell Congress everything about Trump and Russia and illegal dealings, yada, yada, yada. He had the goods on Trump, and it was all going to come out in front of Congress. No. There was nothing. Absolutely nothing. Zero of that was true. But we were supposed to believe it. Now that's just 3 of these big pieces that have blown up. And to quote the article, Cohen's testimony didn't unveil CNN's predicted bombshell, and the network even lied about its source for the article. It should also be remembered that CNN helped kick off the massive 2-year failure of coverage regarding Trump and Russia by reporting the existence of a dossier that turned out to be full of misinformation and rumors, but was paid for in part by the Clinton campaign. These are arguably, again quoting the article, these are arguably actively contributing to the spread of election-related disinformation. No doubt about it. That is a very, very brief list of what we've put up with from CNN alone. So let's now turn to PolitiFact. PolitiFact is, of course, one of the fact checkers on the internet. They're the ones who hand out the pants on fire appellations if you tell a big lie on the internet. And they're more than happy to point that out, except if you're on the left, and especially except if you're 46 asterisk. So MRC, Media Research Center, looked into PolitiFact from the first 100 days of this administration, January 20 to April 30. And they compared it to Trump's first 100 days. Trump's first 100 days, PolitiFact put up 52 fact checks with a truth-o-meter ruling of Donald Trump. In that same time period, Biden got 13 fact checks. 13. 52 is a little larger than 13. In fact, if I can do my math properly, I believe it is 4 times larger. Feel free to check me on the arithmetic. And welcome, Twin Crier, to the Trovo chat. Nice to see you as always. And Dog, thank you so much for being here as well. Nice to see you in the DLive chat. So, the MRC takes it a bit further. They suggested a different metric because, as they put it, the media insists Trump's in his own category on truth and falsehood. So now they look into the fact checks of Biden and fact checks about Biden. A fact check of Biden is, did he make a claim that is false? A fact check about Biden is, did someone make a claim about Biden that is false? And as you can see here on the screen, there were exactly 13 fact checks of Biden and 106 fact checks about Biden in the first 100 days. So it seemed that PolitiFact was a lot more concerned about what people were saying about Sleepy Joe than they were about what Sleepy Joe was saying. And as we all know, and I'm not saying this to be a partisan, I am a partisan, we all know that. But still, every now and then I put on my, everything is relative hat. Biden has told an S-ton of lies these past, if you just started counting from January 20, he has told an S-ton of lies. They would call Trump a liar if he exaggerated something or if he misstated something. Biden has out and out lied time and time again, and in major addresses. His address on gun control from the Rose Garden, there was not one truthful statement in that entire 20-plus minute speech. Not one. He lied time and time again during his joint address to Congress. You can go back and watch the video. I don't believe that I uploaded it to Rumble or Gab TV. I didn't have the time. It was late in the evening and I needed to go to bed. But I will see if I can't upload it to at least Rumble sometime soon, so you can get a look at it. I'll try to do that perhaps tonight if I think of it. But that'll give you an opportunity to go back and look, and you'll see what I mean. Dog also correctly points out, plagiarist in chief. Thank you so much, Dog. Absolutely correct. Plagiarist in chief. He also points out that fact-checking does not help Biden. That's true. He obviously never changes his tone or his quote-unquote facts, even when presented with absolute verification that he is completely wrong. So I teased this at the opening. Asa Hutchinson, the governor from Arkansas. I went after Asa a little bit last week for the way he was handling the transgender situation. He signed the bill, but he was very critical of it. And it seems that he's done the same thing in a slightly worse way regarding critical race theory being taught in government agencies in Arkansas. Instead of signing the bill and standing up for it, he let the bill pass into law without signing it. Asa's arguments for that are it's not needed, it doesn't address the real problem, and there's too much paperwork involved in signing a bill into law. I swear to you, it's in this article here. This is written by Janita Khan on the Epoch Times. He says there's just too much paperwork and administrative things involved in signing a bill into law for him to do it. He just let it happen. I'm not exactly sure how Arkansas's constitution allows a bill to become law by it not being signed. Perhaps there was a supermajority in the House and Senate in Arkansas that overrode a veto. But as I've read this here, there was no veto. He just didn't sign it, and it became law. So he says that, and I'm quoting him, the measure does not address any problems that exist, and the paperwork and manpower requirements are unnecessary. Here's the part that I have a problem with. The law does not apply to public schools, colleges, and universities, law enforcement training, or local governments. So what good is it? I mean, I'm glad Arkansas has put its foot down and said you can't teach critical race theory, which is basically, in case you've been living under a rock, the proposition that all white people are inherently racist, that they're completely irredeemable, and black people can't get ahead because the entire system was built by white people and is against them. So instead of raising the standards and the outlooks for the black community, we have to lower all the standards to meet these victims. That is critical race theory in a nutshell. It is pure out-and-out racism. It was developed by Marxists back in, I believe, the 20s or 30s, when they realized that the class struggle matrix of Marxism wasn't going to work because America is not a class-based society like it was in Europe. America has always had very, very fiscally mobile classes. You can be poor one decade and rich the next, and vice versa. It happens even to huge industrial scions and their heirs. That's the nature of America. So the class struggle polemic just didn't work. So then they thought about, well, let's bring race into it, because America has a history of racism. At the time, Jim Crow was still heavily in effect. The KKK was massive. You remember that the KKK actually marched in Washington when Woodrow Wilson was president, an avowed racist and anti-Semite. Wilson was a vicious man, an absolute vicious man. And a lot of the federal government that we have now is in absolute all due to Woodrow Wilson. FDR just built on the base that Woodrow Wilson created. Woodrow Wilson came up with the idea that it took experts to run a country, that it needed to be run from the top down, that we couldn't let local people decide what was best for them. We needed experts in the federal government to tell us what to do. And the federal government has never recovered from that. And again, under FDR, it just got worse. And then Johnson really blew things up. But for some reason, this law, again, does not apply to public schools, colleges, universities, law enforcement training, or local governments. It also states that agencies are not precluded from promoting racial, cultural, or ethnic diversity or inclusiveness as long as those efforts are consistent with the law. I have no idea what that means. So shame on Governor Hutchinson. But let's be honest, shame on the Arkansas legislature, too. They blew a perfect opportunity to do something right and instead punted the ball down the road. Now, all of this talk about critical race theory, America is systemically racist, police all across the country are systemically racist, all systems are such as well. White people are all totally bent on killing blacks at every opportunity, especially white cops. We know all this to be true according to the CRT proponents. Now add to that their war on cops, their big spending, and their complete disregard for the desires of state and local governments, read H.R. 1, for instance, or making D.C. a state. Add all that into the mix, and you're looking at a party that has completely lost touch with reality and is playing to its most vocal and smallest base. Rational liberals are no longer a part of the Democrat Party. They're either not voting Democrat or they're voting Republican and not telling anyone. Now, I'm out of the prediction business, but every now and then I stick my nose out, or my neck for that matter. And there may be a huge, huge red wave in 2022 because of stuff like this. And a perfect example, more recently than the big losses the House Democrats saw in 2020, and the complete waning of any type of honeymoon for 46 asterisk, I expect his numbers to be underwater within another month. I really do. But we have a race out of Texas that just happened this weekend. It was for Texas 6, a congressional district. And it was run because Representative Ron Wright, who was of Texas 6, died of COVID back in February. And so Texas needed to refill the seat. So they had a special election to see who would fill the seat. You needed 50% plus one vote to win outright. Well, there were 23 people running in that race. 23. And there were a fair number of Democrats. And the Democrats saw this, and they pumped money into it. They saw this as a way to start getting the House back, to put the Republicans, especially the Texas Republicans, on their heels and stem the tide from what could be a real bloodbath in 2022. And I, of course, mean that figuratively. YouTube. I'm not advocating any type of violence. Like fight like hell means just get out there and do your best. Doesn't mean start punching people. Give me a break. The fact that I even have to say that. But the Democrats did not do well in Texas 6 this weekend. They're out of it. The top 2 vote getters are moving on to the actual election, and those 2 are Susan Wright, Representative Wright's widow, and Jake Elzy. I don't know who Jake Elzy is, but they got 19% and 14% respectively. The Democrat, Jana Lynn Sanchez, so she marked a box as a female and Hispanic, or Latina, sorry, I don't know which. But she finished 3rd with 13%. She close but no cigar. And again, the Democrats pumped a lot of money into this. Now, so we'll see Susan Wright and Jake Elzy square off in 2022. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. I believe there's a special election coming up, but I don't know what the date is. But they're not going to wait till 2022. I'm sure of that. That's my mistake. I apologize. And the takeaway from this is Sanchez wrote, and I quote, "On Saturday, Republican candidates got 62% of the vote to 38% for Democrats, or R plus 25. All the things I thought would motivate Democrats, such as the attempted violent overthrow of a legitimate election result," of course referencing the January 6th riot, continuing the quote, "along with Snowmageddon, failed to get our voters out." And Snowmageddon is the Texas colloquialism for the big freeze that happened Valentine's Day weekend, when many Texans actually froze to death because they had no heat and temperatures went well into the single digits. In fact, one day that week, it was exactly 2 degrees warmer in Dallas than it was here in Kenosha, Wisconsin. It was 6 degrees here in Kenosha, and it was 8 degrees in Texas. That is an unheard of temperature. That's a 100-year low. And their power grid was not winterized to an extent necessary to survive such a thing. And electricity went out all over the place. Demand was so great compared to supply that some people were getting electric bills of $1,000 a day for intermediate power. Now, I have a good friend who lives in Southlake, a place that you may have heard of recently with the school board being thrown out. And Southlake does not allow you to purchase power from a co-op, like people say in Denton County could. Denton County being a less affluent area of the Dallas Metroplex. And he's paying 3 times the rate for his power than he would have if he was in a co-op. But he got all the power he needed during that week, and his rates didn't go up at all. So he maybe won some of his money back. All right, dog, have a safe trip to the store. Be well. Be well. Take care of yourself. So, Sanchez also said, "I'm sounding the alarm bell. If Democrats don't organize and prepare, 2022 could be a major setback to our gains of recent years." Well, I would like to ask, what gains of recent years? Aside from winning the White House honk-honk and splitting the Senate, the Democrats haven't been gaining any ground. They expected to win the Senate outright in 2020, and they didn't come close. Now, let us quote President Trump, 45, who said from one of his releases, quote, "Please explain to the Democrats and rhinos the reason Texas 6 completely shut out Democrats in Saturday's jungle primary is because of my endorsement of Susan Wright, who surged last week after receiving it. Republican in name only is a term, rhino, and it explains, is a term used against Republicans who seemingly embrace progressive or democratic politics." And we all know that, of course. Now, here's the thing. Right now, Pelosi can only lose 2 votes in the House and still be able to pass legislation on a majority vote. Because right now the House is 2018 to 2012, Democrat to Republican, respectively. So just 2 Democrat walkaways, abstainers even. And Pelosi's in trouble. I'm sorry, not abstainers, but walkaways. And Pelosi doesn't have the votes. So this is not... I can't do math. That she can lose 2. If she loses 3, she can't pass legislation. The arithmetic in this brain is completely shot. I apologize. And it's written right there in front of me. That's my bad. But this is not good. Pelosi thinks they're gonna do well, that they're gonna hold the majority in 2022, and she says this because the Republicans did not get the gains in House seats from the census that they had expected. Quoting Nancy, they wanted 3 in Texas, 2 in Florida, and the rest. For all the huffing and puffing the Republicans are doing, these numbers were not as good for them as they had hoped. Okay, well, here's the thing. There has been a challenge brought forward against the census after it was released, because you may or may not know, but the estimates of the census from just not very long ago, not even 2 months ago, the estimates were much greater in regards to Republican gains and Democrat losses than the actual census numbers that came out showed. Significantly different. And Republicans want to know why. And they want to see the numbers. They want to see the arithmetic. So that is still cooking. I haven't heard much more about that at the time, but I should tell you now. But we're going to have to keep an eye out for that. Okay, so another piece of state news. I wish this guy would go away until the cops put the cuffs on him, but Andrew Cuomo won't stop being an idiot. You remember, I coined the phrase Cuomo killing fields in direct response to his ability to kill huge swaths of the elderly in nursing homes and long-term care facilities in New York, as well as, we don't know how many yet, in developmentally disabled centers, all of which he forced to take in COVID-positive patients without any regards to quarantining, anything. And COVID just went like wildfire through these facilities. And again, we don't have any of the numbers on the DD facilities yet. But they're still under the same directive that Cuomo put out in mid-March of last year and didn't rescind until June. Now, Cuomo has placed the blame on everybody else except himself, of course. He wrote the directive, he published it, he enforced it, and then when things started looking really bad, he pulled it off the state website. Put it down the memory hole. Tried to, but the internet is forever. Groups like the Empire State Project went after him tooth and nail with FOIA requests for the real numbers on the nursing home and the long-term care facility deaths. And not only did the State Department of Health say that they couldn't release the numbers yet because they needed more time, the reason they needed more time is because they were actively lying about the numbers, not only to Democrats and Republicans in New York itself, but to the feds, who were investigating Cuomo after they got wind of his directive. And let's not forget, Cuomo isn't the only one who did this. The governors in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and California all did the exact same thing. They're just not getting all the attention, although Whitmer's picking up steam. And hello, Ray. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, happy Witcher Day. It was an interesting Witcher stream today. Not great, but certainly not as bad as yesterday's. Not as bad as yesterday's. Thank God. Yesterday was a disaster. But anyway, Cuomo had another of his news conferences today, and he said a couple really, really incredibly stupid things. Even for Cuomo, they're incredibly stupid. First off, he blamed Trump for the nursing home deaths because he says that Trump politicized nursing home policies. Oh, how? See, as I understand it, that's a complete lie. You remember at first Cuomo blamed the CDC for his directive to put COVID-positive patients into nursing homes, long-term care facilities, and DD facilities, pardon me. And then he was called out on that, and he just said, well, I didn't do it. It didn't happen. So the AG of New York, Letitia James, she opens up an investigation earlier this year. We find out that the numbers of the deaths were 60% higher than what we had been told. Some 15,000 deaths in nursing homes and long-term care facilities. And again, we don't know the numbers for the DD facilities. They have not been released. And Cuomo has been tap dancing ever since. So today, regarding the question about how are you handling this, you're refusing to step down, you're going to stay till the bitter end, Cuomo had this to say.
Governor, can we assume that you won't be making any definitive decisions about your future after the release of this AG report, regardless of what's said in it, and instead you're going to wait until the impeachment inquiry is done in the State Assembly? And my second...
Yeah, nursing homes is being looked at by the Eastern District. That was a political investigation started by Donald Trump, who politicized not just COVID, but then politicized nursing homes and policies towards nursing homes, and wanted to blame Democratic governors like myself and Michigan and New Jersey and Pennsylvania. It was all our fault.
And California.
And then had his political Department of Justice start an investigation. And they were a political Department of Justice. There's no doubt about that. So that's being done by the Department of Justice. And I've already told New Yorkers where I am. I did nothing wrong, and period. And I'm not resigning, and I'm doing my job every day.
Kennedy.
Well, the man is a sociopath. He's an absolute, unrelenting sociopath. I have never seen a more blatant liar about such a huge scandal, really, since Nixon. That was Cuomo's "I'm not a crook" speech. Right there. And for him to say that and act like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth, one of my mom's favorite sayings, just goes to show how completely amoral this man is. If there was ever an argument against a political dynasty like the Cuomos, this is it. I mean, he's making Ted Kennedy look like an angel. Because Ted only killed one woman that we know of. Cuomo's got quite a few more skins on the wall than that. But he wasn't done there. He wasn't done there. He then talked about vaccinations. As you guys may know, New York is pretty far behind the vaccination curve. They've done a terrible job of it. Let me interrupt myself real quickly to quote Twin Crier in the Trovo chat. She says, Trump bent over backwards getting New York ventilators, PPE, and even a military hospital ship. What a backstabbing pain in the ass. Not only the ship, Twin Crier, as you mentioned so eloquently, but the Javits Center, where they put up almost 3,000 COVID-capable beds. And it was basically never used. The ship, I believe, saw a total of 7 patients. I believe that was the Mercy. The USNS Mercy. I think Comfort went to L.A. That ship was out of dry dock and in New York Harbor in record time. The Navy had never turned around a ship during a refit faster than they did the Mercy. And it was basically never used. So thank you for bringing that up. And remember, Cuomo couldn't say enough great things about Trump until Trump started doing well in the polls and started overshadowing Cuomo. And suddenly Cuomo became the biggest Trump hater out of all the governors, except maybe for the one out of Washington, whatever that idiot's name is, I forget now. But, so yeah, there's that. There is that. Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. But back to where I was before that excellent piece from Trent Cryer. Cuomo also had this to say about vaccinations in New York. You'll see a graphic here about the differences in percentages of those vaccinated grouped by age. And you see the lowest percentage is basically 18 to, I believe, 25. Now, as we know, that is a group that is very, very, very lightly hit by COVID for the most part. For the most part. Not saying every case, but for the most part, they rarely develop serious symptoms. And with the mixed messaging we're getting from the CDC and from the president regarding such things as masks, many young people, unless they're forced to get the vaccine in order to go back to college, which is happening more and more frequently, I believe Brown and Columbia have both demanded that students get vaccinations or they won't be allowed on campus come September. But a lot of young people are holding back. They don't see the need versus the risk. And I think every American should be allowed to make that judgment. This entire country is built on risk and reward. It's how this nation was founded. People saw a great risk, but they saw an even greater reward. And for that, we have the greatest country the world has ever seen, and hopefully will ever see. So they're taking a wait-and-see approach, which is their right. Cuomo has another way of looking at it, which is the age-old Democrat-strong talking point that if you won't do what we tell you to do, you want to kill grandma. He literally says this. Listen to this.
Who are the groups we're targeting on the vaccination? Youthful and the doubtful. And there is an attitude that they'll be fine. Why should they take the vaccine? Maybe you will get a long haul syndrome that we're not really sure what it is yet, but a lingering consequence of COVID. Or maybe you go home and kiss your grandmother and wind up killing your grandmother.
Oh my goodness. That was Governor Cuomo at a news conference moments ago.
Who are the groups we're targeting on?
I had to play that. I had to play that end there. That was Harris Faulkner. She's the host of Outnumbered, and a program after that. I think it's Outnumbered Plus. I can't remember now. I don't get to watch. I don't get to watch her during the day because I'm doing the show. But I had to play that because her reaction is priceless, absolutely priceless. And I love Harris Faulkner. She's a very, very, very good host and an excellent person in my view, anyway. But so I had to play that. But that's, you're gonna kill grandma. There it is. You're gonna kill grandma. Grandma's been vaccinated, you idiot. If you're doing your job, grandma's vaccinated. She doesn't have to worry about getting sick. That's the whole point of the vaccination, you dumb F. These people rule by emotion and fear. And I know fear is an emotion, but it's a primal emotion. And it is so infuriating to see people treated that way by their governor. So real quickly, on masks, I teased this for the YouTube thumbnail. I got a couple of pictures of 486 Asterisk and his wife and the former First Lady and President of the United States, Jimmy and Rosalind Carter, in reverse order. Now, first of all, the reason this looks like two dolls being stood next to by giants is because the photographer used a fisheye lens. And so the forced perspective of the foreground makes Jill and Joe look much larger than they are in comparison to Rosalind and Jimmy. Just so you know. Picasso's picked up on that right away. It is a cute little room, though, I have to admit. I love the room. And I really like the portrait of Jimmy back when he was either governor or president, there on the upper right corner there above Rosalind's head. I think that's a great portrait of him. He was not an unpleasant-looking man back in his day. He had a rather decent charm going for him. But that's not the important part of this picture. The important part of the picture is, as you can see, no one's wearing a mask. This is a normal picture. These are people living their lives in a normal way. They've all been vaccinated. They're shaking hands. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. I just realized Jill and Jimmy are bumping fists like Jimmy Carter has ever bumped fists with anyone in his life. I'm sure she had to teach him how to do that. Joe's got his hand right there on Rosalind's chair, right next to her there. No mask. Great. Finally, the Bidens are showing us that you can be normal after being vaccinated. No, they're not. This is them leaving. They're outside. They're wearing their masks. How disappointing. How disappointing. And the one thing I want to point out, just in case you hadn't noticed, Jill's mask perfectly matches her dress. Perfectly matches her dress. Now, I've noted back in the past, when Rush Limbaugh was still alive, God rest his soul, that his watch band, his iWatch, whatever you call those, the Apple digital watches, the band always matched the polo shirt he was wearing. Invariably. I think I saw maybe 2 shows out of dozens where they didn't match. And I was impressed. But a mask matching your dress, I think that is really, that's just vanity right there. That's just vanity. I'm sorry. If you can do that, if you've got the money to pull it off, great. Good for you. Good for you. But I just think that's just distressing to me. I think that shows elitism of the highest order. I mean, look at Pelosi. She's always got a mask going with her outfit. It just, wear an N95 and don't be such a jerk about it. Twig Cryer makes an excellent point in the Trovo chat regarding grandmas in New York. Grandma already died in the nursing home. Thank you. I should have thought of that. That's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Ray says it's me. I'm the one. I'm the dummy. Let's skip that. Real quickly, I'm going over for YouTube. You guys are welcome. Get a little extra today. You may or may not have heard of such a thing as the annual Veterans AMVETS, specifically motorcycle ride-in to the Pentagon parking lots, I should say, on Memorial Day. They do it every year. It's a big tradition, and it's called Rolling to Remember. And it's happened every year. So they were approved for their annual permit this year, back on March 11th, from the Pentagon. They had already gotten approval from all the other local and city and whatever agencies that have to approve it, including Capitol Police, et cetera, et cetera. So the last one that came in was from the Pentagon. And they were all set to go. And then a week later, the Pentagon revoked it. Said that it had been approved due to a clerical error, that it was not supposed to have been approved. AMVETS has said over and over again that they have been trying to get the Pentagon to sit down with them and go over AMVETS COVID protocols for the event in order to work out the best way to handle it between their abilities and what the Pentagon wants them to do. They have said this time and time again, and the Pentagon refuses to meet with them. Absolutely refuses to meet with them. Instead, they're just issuing blanket statements that this is all due to COVID, and we can't do it. AMVETS is trying to keep Rolling to Remember moving forward. They're still trying to get the Pentagon to listen to them, to talk to them, and resolve this situation. But Memorial Day is not that far away. And this could be a major slap in the face to the veteran community. I mean, AMVETS, you may not know this, AMVETS is a big partner in the COVID-19 Community Corps. When it was launched, AMVETS National Executive Director Joe Chenelly appeared on screen with Vice President Kamala Harris. Words I hope to never have to say again, but I read it out loud. And it says the Pentagon will not talk to them. And as AMVETS puts it, quote, there are no options with as much space and convenient routes to the memorials, meaning it will be more difficult, disruptive, and expensive than if the Pentagon parking lots were available. We don't have time to worry about who has said no to us at this point. We are now squarely focused on pulling everything together, everything we need in the final few weeks before rolling to remember. What was it that Biden said at the end of basically every speech? God bless the United States and God bless our troops. This is not blessing our troops. This is a direct whiz in their face. This has got to be rectified. I hope to hear more on this over the coming days. So as I said earlier, Liz Cheney's going to be out from House leadership within a week or two. There's a vote coming up, and she's not going to make it. She will not stop beating the I hate Trump drum. And even Kevin McCarthy, I almost said Mike McCarthy, even Kevin McCarthy is done sticking up for her. She, at the Republican retreat last week, she stepped her foot in it big time. Dan Bongino talked about this today, and he had an excellent idea that he thinks what's going on here is Liz Cheney knows her political future is over with, that she is a done doornail when it comes to getting reelected out of Wyoming. So what she's doing now is angling to become the quote-unquote reasonable Republican on either CNN or MSNBC. And I think that's an excellent call. I think he's got a very, very, very solid argument to make there. I hadn't thought of it, but it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Ray said, you said dumb F, but it's dumb E. I got you, Ray. Thank you. Okay. Oh, you said it's you dumb E hat, so that's what threw me off. If you had put quotes in it, then I would have gotten it. Once again, if anyone can misread the chat, it's this guy here. All right, real quickly again, as I said at the beginning, Nancy Pelosi's Archbishop, his name is Salvatore J. Cordileone, and his diocese encompasses Pelosi's district. And a pastoral letter is what I meant to say earlier. I got it now, pastoral letter. I wanted to say encyclical, but I knew that was wrong. But he has said in that, and I quote, if you find that you are unwilling or unable to abandon your advocacy for abortion, you should not come forward to receive Holy Communion. To publicly affirm the Catholic faith while at the same time publicly rejecting one of its most fundamental teachings is simply dishonest. And continuing, and please stop pretending that advocating for or practicing a grave moral evil, one that snuffs out an innocent human life, one that denies a fundamental human right, is somehow compatible with the Catholic faith. It is not. And so let me show you the cover page to his pastoral letter. It is titled, Before I Formed You in the Womb, I Knew You. I have a hard time reading that without crying because it's a very moving passage. It's from Jeremiah 1:5. Let me read it in full. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I dedicated you a prophet to the nations I appointed you. I can't read that without crying. And that is very, very moving. And he's right. He's right. So you can find the article on the Daily Wire. It's from yesterday, written by John Brown. It's the first article I've seen from John Brown. I don't know who he is. I haven't read much of him yet, obviously. But you can find it very easily on the Daily Wire, and I highly recommend you check it out. By the way, speaking of the Daily Wire, Candace Owens is going to be interviewing Trump tonight at, I believe it's 9 a.m. Eastern. Pardon me, 9 p.m. Eastern. 9 p.m. Eastern on the Daily Wire. The stream is available for free. As I understand it, you do not have to be a subscriber to watch it. But if you want to watch it afterwards, you have to be a subscriber. Twig crier. I won't read that because it's a little diminutive of my faith, but that's still funny. It's still funny. Very funny. All right, let's move along then. Let me change our screens here, and we will get with the after show. But first, goodbye YouTube. Let me put up the split screen real quickly. I need to do this so I can determine where I need to cut the video between YouTube and then when I start the second half where I upload it to Gab TV. So thank you all, YouTube. You got extra time again today, quite a bit extra time. I will be back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern for you. Do consider changing to perhaps dlive.tv, AHNC_hat, slash in between those two, to get the full show. But and of course, tomorrow morning, starting at 8 a.m. Eastern, I will begin my latest live stream of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt that I'm doing. We just finished the Fall of the House of Rearden, a side quest that did not turn out at all the way it was supposed to. I'll tell you right out, CD Projekt Red ripped me off from importing my save from Witcher 2 into Witcher 3. I deliberately saved Letho in part to have his side mission in 3 show up, and CD Projekt Red pulled the rug right out from under me and gave me the really wimpy version of that side quest without Letho in it at all. That is exactly the opposite of what was supposed to happen, and I am pissed. But tomorrow's another day. So again, 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow for about 3 hours of play, Witcher 3, and we'll be back here tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, for yet another news rodeo. All right, YouTube, thank you so much for being here.